Hello there, everybody. Hello, pixel pushers, everybody, everywhere. This is Sadiq Hussain here with another Affinity photo tutorial. This time, quite a project-based one. This is all about creating a collage. I often use the terms montage and collage interchangeably, but in fact, they are similar, but when we're talking about artwork or photographs, the word collage is more appropriate, whereas montage is a collection of movie clips or video clips, so it applies to that rather than flat artwork or artwork in a graphical sense. So this is a collage tutorial on how to essentially collect and display a collection of flat pieces of artwork, either things that you've created yourself, or in the case of here, things that I collect, which is cinema ticket stubs. And these are just a few of the cinema ticket stubs from the 1980s, so that's going back a little bit. That'll show my age. And as we go through this tutorial, you'll see some of the films that it refers to. Many of them will be familiar to you. A couple of them have been forgotten now, but most of them are big blockbusters, so you'll be familiar to them. But they mean something to me. They're old ticket stubs that I've kept for decades. I've scanned them in. Now, just as an aside, the best app that I've used that I would recommend to anybody with a half decent mobile phone, smartphone with a decent camera on it, is to get Microsoft Office Lens. And that's a free app from the App Store or from the Play Store if you're on Android, which I am. And it's really wonderful for flat artwork, for photographs, for ticket stubs, for certificates, for documents, for letters, anything like that, because what it does, it automatically finds the edge of an object and crops it for you. Now, I've gone through and fine-tuned it afterwards, and I'll show you that now for the purposes of this project, but it's actually not necessary if you want to use it purely as a record-keeping device, so you can have it in the digital realm, copies of certificates, for example, or copies of letters, or copies of important documents like marriage certificates and things like that. It's great. And of course, ticket stubs, concert tickets, anything like that is really useful. Okay, so this is a lot of steps, a lot of layers, as you can see on the right hand side. Each one of those individual ticket stubs has been brought in as a separate, and I've cropped and I've cleaned around the edges. I'm not going to go through all of this for each individual element. I'm going to show you a couple of rows, maybe less, and then we'll cut to the end where of course I will have done most of it, but the principle and the processes are exactly the same. So the point is, let's start off and then we can work our way through. So I'm going to just rewind this back right to the beginning now, because there's a lot of steps there. It'll just take a few seconds for it to go back to the beginning. There we go. Okay. Now, what I've started off with is a canvas, a blank canvas. And of course, I just went to File, New, and I used a 10 by 8, a 10 by 8, if I can find it. Yeah, 10 by 8 there. Make sure it's 300 dpi, because if you're going to print it out, because this is what I've done it for, I've done it so that I can print out on good quality photo paper and then frame it, and it'd be a good display piece in the hallway maybe, or in another communal area like your kitchen, so that it's a talking point as people come and go. They look at it, not just family but friends and other visitors, and say, "Oh right, is that when that was released?" and so on and so forth. So you pick a canvas, a new document, and then you click on create. And once you've created it, then of course you want to start filling it in with your items. So first thing I want to do is I want to fill this with a background, and so I'm going to use the rectangle shape, and just click and drag a shape over it. I'm going to make it fit exactly the canvas, But if it's slightly oversized, that's fine. And I actually want to fill that with a colour. I'm going to fill it with dark. Last time I had it blue. There was a reason why it was blue. So let's just go with blue again. It's because when the ticket stubs were scanned in, they had an element of blue hue around the edges because of what I'd put them on to scan them, and it just helped to blend that in. But of course you can choose whichever colour you want. So that's that done. Now I'm just going to import a file, open those images I've already scanned them in. They were on my Google Photos drive, cloud storage, and I've just imported them in, and they're all these. Okay, and of course if I want to get all of them, I'll just select them all and open. I'm not going to use all of these for this actual tutorial, because clearly that means the tutorial will be way too long, but I'm going to be using a number of them. Okay, so just wait till it imports them all. So let's just, at the top here now, you can see the tabs in Affinity Photo. Each one of these tabs is one of these ticket stubs, and this is how they get scanned in with the actual app. This is interesting here, is that you can, it's so close I can get to it and hold focus, and you can see the individual fibers of a ticket stub that's nearly 40 years old, 35 years old, and I've put that just on a neutral blue background, a bit of card, just use natural light coming in through the window, and I've used the Microsoft Office Lens app to actually photograph it, and it does a reasonably good job at cropping. But of course it can't crop around here, and this ticket stub obviously has been torn, so it's not a square, it's not a straight edge. But this is where the selection tool will come in handy when we start importing these. So let's start by doing that. So I've got a coloured background, which you can change later on at any point. So you go to each individual one, and because I could just copy and paste these, I could just say copy and then paste and then resize and just do it like this. And because I've got, sorry, let's just undo that. Because I've got, click on the move tool, because I've got a blue background, and that blue is very similar to the edge of that blue, that you could get away with that, but I don't want to do that. What I want to do is to select each individual one. I could place them there, so I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is use the selection tool. You remember, I love the selection brush. It works really well. Again, have the reasonable size, and I'm going to do this a few times, so don't worry if you don't get it first time. Okay, so do a rough selection around the item. Okay. And if I haven't done that, you click on the subtract and make sure that's the marching answer there, and then there as well. Reduce the size of the brush. Just select these areas as well. Not critical, but it really does help. Then click on the refine on the top. Now you've seen me use the refine before. It is so useful that you go through the trouble of doing this part, because what we're doing here, of course, is to refine the selection so that's all okay there, so that these little fibers, that you do capture those. Now, will you be able to see them in the final print on the wall in a frame? Maybe not, but you know, eagle-eyed people will be able to see it, and I think that's what's important. Click apply. Now do copy. Now go to the main document, the canvas, and paste. Each one of these images is large, so of course you could say, well, the canvas needs to be even larger. Yes, you could do that. The canvas needs to be the size that's relevant to your, however large you intend to print it. If you intend to print it to A4 or to A3, then make sure that your canvas source file, when you originally make the new document, is appropriate resolution and appropriate size for your intended use of it. So I'm going to make this about that big. Okay, and then go on to and then go back to that one. And as you go along, just so you don't get confused, just delete, shut down each file as you go along. Okay, so this one here, and again, selection, increase or decrease the selection brush. And basically we're going through, and I'm going to show you how to align these, but put them in by eye first of all, and we're going to refine again, refine edges. Now clearly when I did the earlier one, when you saw it right at the beginning, that was the finished article. It took me a good hour and a half to do that, so it does take time. But here I won't be taking that long. Copy. But of course, you could take as long or as little time as you want and make it accurate. Okay, I'm just going to line this up because I want it to be roughly the same size. There we go. It snaps together. If it's not snapping, make sure that this snapping magnet is turned on, and the move by whole pixels is turned on, and the force pixel alignment is turned on. All those are turned on, because then that helps enormously when you're doing a project such as this. And I'm going to space these out a bit, because clearly I don't want to make it an overly long video. On to the next one. Same principle. Selection brush. Select it all. Now you might not be able to see the marching ants as I'm doing this, but you know the principle, and that's exactly how it's working. Refine. I want to refine that edge there. Now, if that isn't, right, that's not working there. So what I'm going to do, I'll go back to that in a moment. And what I'll do is I'll tell it that that is the background. So you've seen me do this before on other videos. So in this refine option, force the software to know which pixels are the background and which pixels are the foreground. That makes your refining option that much easier. I think there was a section at the bottom as well, up here. Okay, we could do with, we're happy with that. And then click on matte again, and then refine. Increase the size of the brush, refine that again, so you get the little fibers all around there. Now, of course, all of this isn't absolutely critical that you do this, but I think it really helps. Okay, so click on apply. So we've got the selection, copy it back to this one, paste it, resize it, and simply you go through, and as you do one or two of them, the next ones will line up. You can see those snapping tools are engaged. Okay, and again it will align itself, which is great. Let's do the next one. So I'm just going to delete that one. Aliens, 1986. Yes, what a great film that was and still is. So let's go on to this one. Poltergeist 2 in 1986 came out 4 years after the original. Okay, so a selection again. I'm amazed these ticket stubs are in such good condition actually after all these years, but I've kept them pretty safe. So refine, and then we want to say that's the background there, and the rest of it we can just help it along. So we're really just refining the selection. Now again, if you don't want to go to this trouble, that's fine. but I think it really not just helps your project, but helps you to get to grip with the software by doing something that's quite repetitive, but equally it produces a really good result at the end of it for your final end result. Okay, so we're just going through and doing that. Okay, so I am going to put one more in there, squeeze one more in there. There's a couple of other things I want to show you about alignment as well. Let me just do one more and get rid of that, because we don't need that now. On to the next one, and we'll do this one that's got Starman, Jeff Bridges, one of my favourite actors. And not a bad film, Starman, not his best, but it's good. Karen Allen, great story, great performance by Jeff Bridges, one of the few times that he got an Oscar nomination, and in fact one of the rare times that an actor has had a Oscar nomination for acting in a science fiction film. So look that up, doesn't happen very often, but that was Jeff Bridges. Very good performance. Okay, so refined it, click apply, copy onto that one, and then paste. Okay, now you can use keyboard shortcuts, you could use the menu, you could use whatever method works for you. So I'm just going to position that on top so I can size it appropriately. Luckily, most of these ticket stubs are very similar ratio. Now, to make these align up, first of all, the rulers on the top, the vertical axis and the horizontal axis, you can just click and drag a line out and position it. So say you want to position it there. Okay, and that blue line is there, look, just there. You can't see it here because the thing's blue as well, but you can see it there. And if I bring the other one down and bring it down to there, so you see how it snaps into place. Okay, that gives me a guide. Now, if I want to align these layers, so I just select each one by holding down the Shift key, or you can click on each of the layers here on the right hand side, go to alignment, menu option at the top here, and we want to do align space horizontally. Okay, so click on that and then they'll space themselves equally between each other, and that's a great way of doing it rather than guessing it. Okay, and then you'd obviously do the next row and then the next row. So I'm just going to do one more row. What I'm going to do actually is to group these together. It's not a bad idea to group each one of these rows together and then right click and then group them and then call that layer. It's good housekeeping if I just say top row, so it's easy to keep track of them. So all of those items now are in there. Okay, and then we'll go on to the next ones. We've just done Starman, so let's just do another one. Don't save. We'll do Dune. That's very appropriate with the new version of Dune out, the Denis Villeneuve version, which is fantastic, incidentally. But this is the old 1984. In fact, it came out. I saw it in late 84 and early 85 version, the David Lynch version. Not very good. It wasn't very good then. In a lot of ways, not a good adaptation. Visually it looks pretty good for the day, but not good. It's certainly not good by today's standards. Okay, with or without the new film. Okay, I think we're just going to fine tune that there. That's it, and then refine. But I did love going to see this because I knew then, I'd read Dune, I've read the book, I knew it was a huge influence on George Lucas for the original Star Wars film, but also the original trilogy, and I wanted to see those influences. So I read the book and I saw the film. Film was not good. Now I've missed out a little bit here by the 8, so I need to tell you that that is the foreground. So I just paint over that by selecting foreground tab here. Just notice that. Okay, and click apply, and of course copy, and then back to this, and then paste. So you now know the routine. And when we cut to the end, actually, it's a much bigger document, you'll see. And that's because I did that first, and then I've dialed back. But that doesn't matter. What matters is the principle of it. We'll just do 3 rows here rather than doing too many. Okay, so we don't want that anymore. And as I'm doing these, of course, I'm giving you some extra hints and tips and ideas on what you could do. So although the task I'm doing in front of you could be repetitive, hopefully my commentary is giving you some additional reasons for staying tuned and continue to watch it. Okay, so we're going to say that's background, just there, and just there. So I'm just using the scroll wheel on my mouse just to scroll backwards and forwards. And in Affinity Photo, it's a good idea, go into the preferences and specify that you want the mouse wheel to be act as your zoom in and out control. That really helps enormously when you're doing a lot of going backwards and forwards, I find anyway. So I'm going to fine tune that now. See, that comes of rushing when I'm doing the selection, but in fact it's counterproductive, so I shouldn't do that. So Commando or Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's a film I've not seen in a while now. So maybe these are prompts to go back and watch something again. Okay, it'll just lock into place. You see that there? Let me just zoom in. As I move this item in, it locks. It basically magnetically snaps into place because of these guides are active. And then as I reduce the size, I don't have to guess, it automatically gives me that locking line. Okay, that's worth just showing you that. Okay, then go on to the next one. And do this one, Young Sherlock Holmes. Now, that's a film that not many people talk about these days. If ever you get this in a quiz, in a trivia quiz or a pub quiz, bar quiz, anything like that, and the question is, what was the world's first computer-generated character in a motion picture? The answer is the stained glass knight in Young Sherlock Holmes. Okay, stained glass knight in Young Sherlock Holmes is the answer. 1986 by ILM, of course. It wasn't Jar Jar Binks. That was much later. It was, in fact, the stained glass man sometimes, but he's a knight in a church, and he was the world's first fully realized CGI character, not effect, but character. Okay, so I've copied that, and we'll paste that. Oh, that's big. Okay. Snaps into place. 3, we need to do a couple more there. Okay. Moscow on the Hudson. Yes, that's not a film that you hear about much these days. But some of you might know it. I can hear you all shouting at the screen, either saying, "Who's in it? What's it about?" That's a funny title for a film, Moscow on the Hudson. But also you might say, oh, I know what it is. I know who's in it. And Robin Williams is the main star of it. But it's got some other big names, big actors who've become big actors since then in it too. Well worth seeing. It's a bit of its time, which of course most films are. And but I loved it. I loved it. Again, I haven't seen it for some time. Don't see it on the TV very often. But it's well worth watching, I think. Well, if nothing else, for Robin Williams' performance. Okay, that's another one done. We're getting there now. We're getting there. There we go. Lock. And snap. Don't worry about too much about the spacing. Remember, we're going to space those out evenly as we did before. Okay, we're going to do this. We're not going to do that one because that's actually got no film title on it. So I'm going to just delete that one. We're going to go to this one, The Right Stuff. Oh yes, there's a new TV series depicting the right stuff, the Mercury program before the Apollo program, NASA's space flight program. And but this film came first, The Right Stuff, which is really good. Again, one of my favourite films of the era. Long film, but it's got some great stars in it. Virtually every single actor in this film went on to become very big. Some of them were hardly known at the time, but they've suddenly become, and there's some of them are really big even today. And well worth catching this film. Philip Kaufman wrote and directed it, I seem to remember. So another... Oh, now I need to go back there because I didn't. I need to refine it because I missed this out here. That's the foreground. That's it. That's the beauty of the of using the history option here, is that you can easily just go back. Okay. Now, shall we do the last row? No, because the last row is done. I've done it all, and I've done it much bigger. So I'm not going to go through and do that. You'll see as we segue to a much bigger document where there's more rows than this, more individual ticket stubs. But the principle is exactly the same because I want to be able to show you a few other things. So again, we want to select these. And this row, click on alignment, click on space horizontally, and that's that done. Okay, so what I need to do is to space that. If something is aligning with something, you click that one first and then you do it. You'll find, can you see that how that snaps in place now with that green line? It's because I clicked that first, and it's telling the software that the next time you move this, I want that to snap with that. And so that's important. So now again with this, if I use that, that's it. Now if I click these, I should have done this first. And I say I want to align those horizontally, spaced equally. Now that's better. Okay, so those are aligned. Now they've got no drop shadows behind them. So if I click on one of them, say this one, and go to Effects and Outer Shadow, okay, just pop that out, Outer Shadow. I'm only going to do it on one because I'm going to show you how you can apply to all of them. Okay. Don't want a big shadow really, I don't think. Let me just zoom into that so you can see what that shadow is looking like. Yes, I do want that shadow to be. Okay. Okay. So let's say we just want to do it to there. Close that. If I go back to the layers palette and I go to that particular effects there and right click on it, I can do copy, and that's copying the effect. Whatever the effect is, it's copying. Could be multiple effects. Okay, so now when I go onto that one, the next layer, if I just go to edit and paste FX, and that then pastes the effects on that one. So of course I could do that. I could select multiple ones like those three and then click edit, paste FX, and it'll paste the effects on all of them. So that is a great, neat way of saving time. You can see there how the drop shadows on all of them, and I just want to do it on these as well, on all of them, and edit, paste FX, and there we go, and that's done. Remember that first row was grouped together as a group. I'm going to group these as well, so those are all selected, and if I just put that and say just put them into a group, that's grouped, so I can just change the name of that, second row, and so on. So it's a great way of keeping things organized, each one of those. Okay, now the rest of it will come on to we'll segue straight into the latter part of it. So this is the starting point. So you have a canvas, you have an appropriate document size, you color the canvas, and of course by having the canvas with a rectangle cover on it, shape on it with a different color, is when I click on that, and that is at the bottom because these items need to be at the top, is I can just change the color anytime I want and live. And I might not want to, I might actually think in maybe a nice grey color offsets that really nicely, and I might want that. So it's always worth doing that separately, so don't amalgamate all the layers and don't create them in one go. Now I just want to select that last one because I want to put a border on it, and you'll see in one of my other videos, I'll leave a link in the description. If you want to know more about borders, then you can follow that. But really, if you go into effects and we go into outline and we click on the gear icon and how big we want it on the inside. Do we want it to be black? No, not probably. I'd want it to be white maybe, and a bit bigger than that. Nice border. Okay, we'll leave it there, and that's your border. There's your individual one. With that drop shadow, it really helps to make it 3D, and once that's framed, it'll look wonderful. Okay, and of course we're going to segue right into the end of this video where we put the label at the bottom and so on, and that's because I did that big project first, and then I've just gone back and started it with the smaller projects. It's easier, the bite-sized one with just 10 parts of the collage. It's easy to start with that and then show you that if you just extrapolate that with 50 individual items or 20, the principle is exactly the same. Okay, so let's get on to the next part. As we know, just starting the last row here, so it's been quite a marathon. Obviously, I've skipped a lot of those repetitive steps, but now we get into the last one. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So here we go. Let's just do another selection. I'm just going to speed through this so we can get to the last part of it. I think by now you get an idea of the whole point of having this selection right in the first place as best you can, and then refine it, and then that gives you a really good base on which to do the rest of your project. Because ideally, if you're doing this for yourselves, you'd want to save these selected files. I've not been saving them because this is the end result of what I want. But if you want to keep them for further work, you don't want to be selecting them again and again and again regularly. So what you want to do is to save those selections, save the files rather, and then come back to them as you need to. And then finally you can get rid of them, obviously, at some point. Okay, get to the master document and paste. So we've done this now so many times. I know it can become repetitive, but also it's good practice, as I've said before. So let's just position that, and we'll space these out appropriately once we get to the end. So like I said, I'm not saving them, I'm just going on to the next one. Select the selection tool. There we go, all the way down the middle. And if you take your time, then that can save you more time in the long run. Reduce the size of the brush, appropriate. Click on refine, as we've been doing. And the refine button option really gives you a good end result, a good selection with all these fine fibers that the Microsoft Office Lens app has picked up is fantastic, because I think to have those fine fibers really adds some detail to the let me just redo that. See, I didn't select that part, so that's a foreground, so just change that to foreground, make sure I've got everything, then click apply, then do copy, and then paste. Yes, having the fibers of the ripped paper, those fibers still exist all these years later, and that's great, I think, to have that. And we're now just coming to the end, and we'll do this one, selection tool, up to the top, down, reduce the size of the brush. You can do that on the fly, as I'm doing now. Now down here I'm going to deselect that by zooming right in and then reduce the size of the brush, because it'll actually make it better when I'm refining it if the bulk of it's deselected in the first place. Okay, so we want to refine. I've done it so many times I'm getting lost myself. So when something's repetitive like that, like this, clearly you sometimes either need to take a break or you need to concentrate, because it is very easy to lose track of which step are you doing. So concentrate or take a break. So here we go, just coming up to the end of that layer. Now of course you can apply this basic collage technique to all sorts of things. You could be a collector of coins, you could be a collector of stamps, you could be a collector of other trinkets, you could be a collector of photographs, old photographs, maybe little photographs, sort of Lockheed photographs, all sorts of different things. And you can apply this to anything, obviously. It's a question of how you capture that image in the first place, how you digitize it. Of course, if it's flat artwork, then I've already said use the Microsoft Office Lens. Great app. Of course, if you want to use your flatbed scanner, use that. Takes a bit longer. End result is the same. If you are photographing a 3D object like a trinket or a coin, you might want to photograph it in a light box or photograph it in some other way, so you can basically isolate it from its background or have a neutral background. And that's the key thing, of course, for having a uniform nature to the object. So when you do put together a collage, it looks realistic. Uniform, as they say. Okay, so let's just get to where we want to get to. We're coming to the end. Thank you for bearing with me and for sticking to the end, which is great. And of course, you don't need to do it this many items. You might want to do half this number. You might want to do a lot less. Have I just done that one? Yes, I have. So I think we've got one more left. So last one. I have got more actually, which I will be doing a slightly different version of it. But I wanted to try this technique out on these ticket stubs, which I'd already scanned in with my app on my phone some time ago now, a good 18 months ago. And I've been looking for a project on which to use it, and this was perfect with Affinity Photo and creating some kind of a collage. And I thought this is perfect use for it, and I shall actually print this out and I shall frame it and hang it on the wall, because it is art in its own right, I believe. And of course it demonstrates your skill in editing, in using Affinity Photo, but more importantly, I think it's a great record, a visual record that other people can share, and a talking point in the home if you frame it and put it on display. And of course, if you've got references to a particular period in time of your life, then that's even better. Right, I think we're done with all of these. I'm going to delete that last one. So we're left with the main canvas. So I'm going to spread some of these out a little bit. I'm going to move them. These are not in, you could put them in chronological order, of course. You could put them in genre order. You could put them in cinema order. There's all sorts of things you can do. But here, what I'm going to be just looking at is just moving them around so that they're spaced more evenly. Okay, so they're not so crowded. So I'm just moving these about. So if I just put that there, maybe. Okay. So although I'd spaced these out already, I'm just rearranging them. I want to demonstrate this snapping tool, the guides, and make sure you got these selected at the top. The snapping options are all on, because it really helps. And the second is that it just means that because they're all on individual layers here on the right hand side, you can choose to adjust them at this stage. Of course, you could save the file as an Affinity Photo file for further editing further down the line, and that's not a bad idea. Rather than saving each individual scan as an Affinity Photo file, keep the finished product so that you can go back and edit the individual items. That would be my advice anyway. So just spacing these out a bit more. I hadn't counted the number, how many there were going to be. I hadn't sort of worked that far in advance, but of course you could do that and say, well, I've got 49 items. I could do a 7 by 7, and that will give me an even spacing. Now I've left more of a gap at the bottom, because what I'd want to is that if I'm going to be putting text under every one of them, then I'd go through and I'd leave some space there. So now those are spaced out. So what I'm going to do is, if you want to space out each individual row, you might want to then select each one. So Command key, select or the Shift key. Okay, so that's row selected, and I want to arrange those. I want them spaced evenly horizontally. Okay, the same again for these. Shift key, so I'm selecting each one. I could do it from the layers, but visually it's better to do it from here. So again, alignment, horizontal equal spacing, so that's great. And then the next one, Shift key, and then press each individual layer. So long as you're on the move tool at the top right here, top left there, sorry, then that will work perfectly. So here we go to the last one. And then align those as well. Okay, now if you wanted to have an equal spacing between the rows, what you could do, of course, is to select each row, group them. So, for example, if I wanted to, first of all, let me put all the shadows in. So let me go to one of the ones where the shadow effect has been applied, that one. Okay, so the effect, I'm just going to right click, copy. So that's copied that effect. Now what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to select each one of the items that hasn't got a shadow on it. Okay. And then if I click on edit and paste effect, sorry, that then should put it on all of them. Okay, where it hasn't, see if I just go and select those and then edit, paste effects. There we go. It's probably better to do them in small groups because sometimes it selects them on a different basis. Okay, so edit and paste effects. So those shadows now are consistent, those drop shadows, because I'm copying the effect over and not the item. Okay, you really do this a row at a time as you go along. I think that's a good idea. And so those bottom ones are done, those are all done, those are all done, those are all done, those are all done. Okay, so I've got too many at the top. I could probably delete one of those and leave more space. In fact, I'm going to do that because that hasn't got a title on it, that one. Oh, that's a group, isn't it? So let me just find out which one it is. The top row. It would be that one. Okay, so we're going to delete that one. And that means we can move these along a little bit. And then if we select that alignment, okay, because it's in a group, I need to select them individually. Alignment, that's better. Okay, so those are done, those are done, those are done. I'm happy with that. Clearly I'd need to go in and put the labels on there, but what I want to do finally is put one final label in here. If I just create a label here, and I want it to be blue. Let's make it a light blue maybe, and we don't want it to have rounded corners. Maybe change the amount, so more of a lozenge. Okay, and we want to move it so it's in the center. That's it. And then we can put some text in there, of course. So obviously you come up with a cinema going in the 1980s. You find something that's suitable, and then the move tool. Then I'm just going to position that in the center of the actual text box. There we go. Or actually on that lozenge, I'm going to give it an outline. So just change it on the top here, the outline. Just click on that particular layer and give it an outline. Just a little black. Yeah, I think we could give it. No, we're going to give it a white outline actually. The stroke, we want it to be white. That's it. That's much better. There we go. Okay, so that's the end of that task. So that's a great example of how you can go from capturing images digitally using an app on your mobile phone through to creating a collage of something that interests you and making something really of it. Now, we've done nothing with the border here, and I think we probably could put a frame around that. So, you know, if I wanted to add an effect there, and I might want to have an outline on the blue background, and if we say we want it on the inside, we want it to be quite big, and we want it to be maybe white. Okay, now the reason why I'm only getting it on the one side is that if you recall, that layer, if I go to the move, is bigger than the canvas itself. Can you see that? So if I just bring that down so it fits exactly onto the canvas, that'll solve that problem completely. So that's exactly right. So now what I want to do actually is move this into an appropriate place. And in fact, what I'd want to do is to group that text and that background lozenge together. So click and hold the shift key, click both of them, right click and group, because really those are one and the same. They are together. So now when I move them, they will move together. Okay, so I can position them. And if I wanted to change the size of them, they would both change at the same time. Okay, so that's it. Okay, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me, and like I said, bearing with me. This has been quite a long and in some ways a tedious project, but of course that tedium is really what tests your concentration, but also the final results, because I think that looks great. You know, if you was to frame that and put it up on a wall, that would certainly be a talking point. You might not want to put your original cinema stub tickets, maybe because there's writing on the back of them, or maybe because you want to keep them and you want to do it this way, so you're not pinning actual butterflies in a frame. We got the digital versions of them, and I think that's a great way of displaying, and it's certainly a good talking point. So thank you again for watching. Please leave me some comments and any feedback and thoughts that you might have, and great ways that you'd like to apply this particular technique with things that mean something to you. And I'd love to hear about that. And of course, if there's any suggestions of how to improve this series of videos, I more than welcome those as well. There's plenty of individuals out there who are very, very proficient at Affinity, but also have great creative ideas. And of course, it's really, creativity is very, very subjective, and but I'd welcome any thoughts that you might have. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.